Going live. Hey, we're live. Great. Whew, this tea is very hot. It's very, very hot. It's a beautiful hibiscus tea. And I'll show you later, as soon as I finish drinking this, the blood red color of it. It's incredible. It's more fuchsia than blood red, to be honest. It's not that dark. But anyway, welcome to another awesome episode of Poetry Hour. Today, we're going to be exploring the work of Gilbert Sorrentino. His book of poetry is called The Darkness Surrounds Us. It is his first work from 1960. It was published by a relatively small press, and not sure how many copies of it are out there. eBay says it's something like $20 to $35, which for a book of poems, that's an expensive piece of work. So for what it is, it's kind of a rare piece of poetry. So who is Gilbert Sorrentino? Before we get into reading his poetry, Gilbert Sorrentino he's considered one of the founders of metafiction or postmodern fiction writing. He has this way of writing novels and novels. He has one that's called, what is it? It was called Mulligan Stew, which seems to be pretty famous. The Sky Changes actually seems to be a more famous work, but I haven't read any of his novels, so I don't have any prejudice there with regards to his work as a novelist. I did read his book of poetry, and we're going to go through all of it today, at least as much as we can in the time that we have. And there's a very special way that this poetry has to be read. You can't read it like some poetry. You have to really go slow, and there's a reason for that. So I got to open this up to you. Oh, thanks for your patience. Okay, so this says, "The Darkness Surrounds Us" by Gilbert Sorrentino, and there is a drawing that someone made of him. Now, I want you to imagine this guy with a really big mustache and a "I'm from New York, don't give a fuck" attitude, okay? He really doesn't care what you think of his poetry. So sometimes it's a little difficult to follow, but other times it makes a lot of sense, and read at the correct pacing, it's great. So quick about Gilbert Sorrentino from the inside cover. This was before he was ever a novelist, so it's kind of an interesting introduction. He was born in 1929, New York City, raised in the same city, attended New York public schools, many jobs, Brooklyn College in 49 to 51, U.S. Army from 51 to 53, Brooklyn College 55 to 56. He did not graduate. Married, father of 2 children, lives in Brooklyn, began Neon in 1956 as a Mio sheet. It still happily continues. Not really sure what that is. Maybe it's a magazine. 3 great literary markers are Pound, who taught me that verse is the highest of arts and gave me the sense of tradition; Williams, who showed me that our language can produce it; and Creeley, who demonstrated that the attack need not be head on. A little cryptic, but interesting that he already sees himself in the leagues of poets that are fairly impressive. I mean, Ezra Pound, pretty impressive. Williams could mean several. I mean, it's not going to be like William Shakespeare, but like, there's several Williams, so I'm not quite sure who he's talking about. There's a foreword from the director who made this book of poems come together. I'm not going to read it. It's kind of long and a little nonsensical. I feel like a lot of times with early poetry, you had to be steeped in the tradition of small publication poetry to really grasp it. Because much like Poetry Hour, which is made for a very small niche audience, probably max, there's only about 1,000 people in the world that would really appreciate having a book of poems read to them. But in the same way, these publications probably were only made for small audiences. So those audiences would really know their poets very well. So stay with me as we read through this. after we get done and we're very fully involved with Gilbert Sorrentino, I'm going to read a poem that I made. And I'm pretty excited about that. Some feedback that I got was that I probably should just produce poetry before the show and then read it during the show. I think that's great. So today's a pilot for that. Stay with us. At the very end, I'll share my Gilbert Sorrentino themed poem. So this book is for his wife, Elsine. Well, maybe she's dead, maybe she's not. Anyway, he's dead, so he can't be offended if I said his wife's name wrong. A lot of people say my wife's name wrong, and I'm never offended. So anyway, let's jump right into it, okay? Thanks for joining. Quick sip of tea. Ooh. Hibiscus and ginger. I'll show you what it looks like real quick, just so you can see the color of it. It's beautiful. Watch this. Look at that blood red fuchsia color. It's a gift from my friend Adam Smith. So I'm very excited to be enjoying this tea. A fixture. I've nothing to say to them. Pride is solid as summer heat. That is to say, you can't cut it. With a knife in the kitchen, I cut a tomato, nothing to say to them. Let them rot and be bitten by night in the country. I have nothing to say to them, and I won't write. You ever been so mad at somebody that you swore you'd never talk to them ever again, and you'd never write them either? Well, that's a pretty good example of that. The Fights for the Nova Scotia Mine Survivors, 1958. The coal was blacker than coal when it all came down on them. Into the shaft, into the tunnel, they worked. A slab of earth moved into it, and when they turned, it was there. 13,000 feet of night. But they sang against it, talked against it, and they beat it. Ate chunks of it and beat it. Indians made cakes of locusts and sat out the plague. These recipes are found in losers' cookbooks. This one troubles me because in the last decade or so, there was on the news some folks who got stuck down into a mine. I think it was a coal mine, if I remember right. And it was horrifying. It was absolutely horrifying to think about these men just trapped in these. It's just horrifying. But the thing that really troubles me about this poem is how he says Indians made cakes of locusts and sat out the plague. These recipes are found in losers' cookbooks. You know, it's funny. I never really thought of miners as losers. I never really thought of Indians as losers. But if we can open our minds for a moment and imagine what he's trying to get at, the Indians didn't win the Battle of the Plains, even though they didn't see it as a battle, but America took the entire continent from them and gave them small chunks of land and said, good luck. Enjoy the plague. You know, they didn't necessarily win there. And how about miners? Mining is not necessarily the most prestigious of jobs. It's a hard freaking job. It's like one of the hardest jobs in the world and one of the most dangerous. That said, you have to be a special kind of someone, maybe by Gilbert Sorrentino, a loser, to take on mining. It's tough stuff to think about. Anyway, let's keep going. The survivor. The reddest of sunsets will not save you from the vicious week, nor will a hard blue sky definite among the leaves. They are useless against the stretch of 7 days. Believe in it or not, friends of mine have lost themselves between Monday and Friday. Some on the weekends too have floated into the blue. I tell you that once on the beach, the sky was so blue and so yellow too that nobody knew was it yellow or blue. Yet the week had those 7 days. He's not a bad poet. It's just a little obscure, a little strange. Seems to be more or less trying to capture on images that he only really understands. And likewise, you have to relate to it. I think that's one of the fun parts of poetry, is having to relate to it. I'm thinking of a time when I was at the beach in California. My wife and my sister are visiting the beach. It was gray. It was so gray that the sea was gray. And the mist obscured it all. Right? No, I'm getting things confused. It was bright. It was brilliant white bright. And the sea shone like the sun. And we tried to crawl into the water of Northern Californian coasts. It was cold. It was so cold. Anyway, let's get back into poetry and not my memories. An action. Not in his idiom, yet he must approach it. And if there is danger, not knowing whether or not he will best it, the man yet approaches. An attack. A tangle of words. Shards appear. A conglomerate puff with 32 heads as perimeter. Moon Mullins had lived through it, the lout, so why not he? The question. Given that this man is a married man and had 2 kids when he wrote this, I suspect that living with a gal that was probably from New York as well, she was one hot mom. She would say some things, ask some things that would take a little bit of guts. So, and having been in the military too, he will probably continue to relate things. Things that are relevant to New York life, military life, father life, husband life. Next poem. The Crisis. That I cannot take, and that she will not give, but will not have it taken. Something like a brick wall is reached. One can vault it or smash it down. There may be another, taller, behind it. Or maybe not. Or maybe a plain with sagebrush or fields of sweet grass and alfalfa. Timothy was always a favorite word. You know, this takes a second for me to try and grapple with it, but follow me. So I'm a married guy, right? And when you're married, there are particular problems that occur, crises that can occur. And you can go at those crises, but a lot of times there's just more crises behind it. Sometimes you can just go around it. And a lot of times, this sounds so silly to say it, we preoccupy ourselves with imaginary things in order to escape the crisis that we might be dealing with being married as we are. Anyway, next one. 3 quatrains. When I say love, It has a meaning to it, not a thing. That is an untruth. A state, certainly. It was hot. Fishing, proclaimed in December, is next to nothing to the hearer. How can he comprehend July? Yet certainly it was July and was hot. As much as love is when I say it, hot, that is, but no thing. Love. Oh, love. Love is like hibiscus tea. It is sweet, dark, and slightly bitter. And yet, it's more a process than anything else. I think I like what he's trying to say here. Love is not a thing. It's not just something, like I fell into love. Like I fell into a big pit, right? It's a state. It's a state of mind. It's an experience. So to make love would be to more or less make the state of mind. Not bad, right? Didn't think you'd get a love advice from a New Yorker today, did you? Well, it's pretty good advice. Van Wyck Expressway. I've got the COVID. No, I don't have COVID. Van Wyck Expressway. Abruptly, the thought of her stirred. In the air of the bridge, each car below, and her face in the front seat. The traffic was swift. The highway went shining straight into the hill. We were upon it. I saw myself clearly, fumbling into her life, a soap-scented configuration, a gust from the sea. Also, will take you from bridges to highways to hills, from borough to borough. I would take this girl behind me from borough to borough. So many boroughs. As I've been married almost 8 years, you have experiences with this person. You share experiences with this person. And not only do you face each other, but you also face the world together. Not always in a car, but on a walk, or face problems and stuff like that. So I think that's a very lovely way of looking at a relationship, like driving on a highway. Memorial Day. And says for his wife. Not that there was a secession, but that this is a movement upward to a place we were before. Something to do with the gin, but that's not the half of it. Bluntly, it's love again. It's a return to youth, except anyway. The wistfulness of his poetry is kind of fun. I think that one of the unique things that I'm experiencing while reading Gilbert Sorrentino is his capacity for love, or his exploration of it. I don't know how long he'd been married at this point. He has two children. Say 2 sons? 2 children. Doesn't say whether they're boys or girls. And when you're in this state of love, it's great. It's grand. It's amazing. You can drive from borough to borough. And then other times you're not in love. But that feeling of falling in love again, It's a cool feeling. I like it. I mean, I hope you like it too. If you like love, comment below that you love love, or you like love, or that you love like. Anyway, a benediction at autumn. I suppose that the sea is still there. You may look. If you wish, I'll take your word for it. So things occur, or they do not occur, or they are and are not thought worthy of record. A blue wind from Europe is over us, and the sun is curled in the eye of the flower. May I wish such a peace to descend on you all, both woman and man, but especially married. The first part of the poem is a little cryptic. The second part of the poem makes a whole lot of sense. But I'm imagining that he's having this conversation with his wife, or even with himself. And he might even be so cryptic as he's relating to a scene that happens in Ulysses by James Joyce, where Stephen Dedalus is standing on the bay cliffs, and he closes his eyes and imagines that none of it's there, but it's still there. So when he opens his eyes, it's still there. Was it ever gone? So maybe he's that obscure, but it's hard to say. I would think that some poets are, in an effort to be thought literary, will make obscure references. So this one, I think there's, again, with the obscure references, I don't necessarily know what this next poem is about, but I'll share it with you nonetheless. The Man in the Moon. Old man with whitening beard. Snapped once his fingers and the world began. And with it, Mr. Moon. No matter what the wise ones say. The voyeur, Mr. Moon, and the man in him. With all those dirty postcards taken of all of us. To be bathed in milky light. To be kissed in milky light. The flashbulbs of that lecher in the moon, in Mr. Moon, in Jules Lafourgue's beloved moon, beloved Mr. Moon. And wait till you see this one, says the man. Wait till you see this. And what a joke it'd be. It's someone that you love and that you did. It's funny when you run into some poems that are a little obscure, right? It has the mark of sentiment to it. It has a slight turn. Not so severe, but I'm imagining, right? I'm imagining the kind of life that he lived, living in New York. How strange it would have been to see someone that you loved while going about your way in New York City in the moonlight. Kind of interesting. Anyway, let's jump on to the next one. The Spouse. He came to the day that made him a hopeless husband, and he said to himself that he was indeed that husband. But what kind of husband did the bitch suspect he was? Could it be possible she suspected that one day he would wonder, then suspect her infidelities? He was incapable of that suspicion. He was not capable of his suspicions toward himself. His capabilities concerned the pinning of beetles and birds to a piece of black felt watching seabirds and land birds and all sorts of animals also. He was a goddamn fool. Infidelity is a very tricky topic. It's real. It happens a lot. In fact, infidelities happen every single day around the world. And a lot of times people don't suspect that it's even going on. They have no suspicions whatsoever that the person that they love could, in fact, not be faithful. Yeah. It sucks that it's such a thing that people have this capacity in them to, well, when I share my poem, maybe you'll grapple with a little bit of this thought. But like the moon, people tend to wax and wane in their love for each other. That's kind of why I get the opportunity to fall in love again. So just don't be a fool. Infidelities are real. Man and wife. When it comes to the calling of names, they were looking into the forest. Birches stood out among oaks and a couple of pines. There are some I can think of for you. A blue jay was chorus to this, and to his silence. The forest held close to the morning. What names? His voice almost drowned by the jay. What names? What names? She repeated. And the morning broke loose upon them. You are a name too, he said. Not what I called you before. Ha! She said, and again his voice then. You are the forest right there, and your body that blue jay. You are too much to know. You bitch of a forest and jay, you bleak-hearted bitch of a morning, you stillest birch tree. It's kind of funny because, and my wife just here sitting with me is kind of smirking too, because these are what are called lovers' spats, where two people, they love each other, they really, really do, but they also really, really don't like some of the things they have to deal with. And it just so happens that for Gilbert Sorrentino, one of the things that he brings up, the spouse, the topic of infidelities, it can be really tough to continue a relationship when that exists in the past. And so sometimes you might take opportunities amidst your love to kind of make a stab, like he does here. Calls her a bleak-hearted bitch of a morning. Anyway, you stillest birch tree. So, midnight special. We went through the hedge and into a garden. My roses were there. Then things became slanting snow. In the center, my son, cold and crying. I was angry with him, his tears, a reproach. Waking, the sound of the clock and his breath. Over his bed I wept, that he should be so helpless, and I as helplessly vindictive. Child, shine your ever-loving light on me. I think that he captures the double entendre of having a son, a child who is your son. And I don't have kids yet. I will. You just wait. I will have kids. But the thing is about children, from my experience being the eldest of many kids, is that children have this impeccable way of just being unbelievably loving. Unbelievably so. No matter how mean or angry or rude or upset you can get to them, they can be unbelievably loving. And there's a lot to learn there. We can learn a lot from children. And I suspect that he learned a lot from having kids too. This tea just reminded me of something. Tilt. We will have nothing that lacks the formal evocation. Yah! To crown you with it. Nor should you be afraid what to fear from the curtsy or the handshake. Stroking his long mustaches, he moved quietly from them. Steel beams hung from the sky. Whatever will become of the lyric, that will become of the eye. You know, now this being my second read through and reading every single poem aloud, I believe that this guy thinks of himself as a Stephen Dedalus character, a introspective metaphysician who is wandering through the universe, making sense of it in the form of poetry. I mean, here he says, whatever will become of the lyric. That's not to say lyrics in music, but the style of lyric, which has its own particular meter and rules and rhyme schemes. So, what will become of it? What will become of himself, of the I, right? When you die, what happens to the I that lives inside of you? I don't know. Some say heaven, some say hell, some say nothing. So, oh well. Sunny down south. I had a friend once borrowed 20. This was Xmas money. Swore he'd pay it back before the jolly season. No soap. Scotch that I'd been tasting in my dreams for weeks. Wound up 6 quarts of beer. He wrote the 31st. In Mexico. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. P.S. Did I leave my Zippo never fail in your drawer? Yeah, I didn't really like this poem because I think it's kind of a lazy poem. But I'm imagining that he's got this friend, a good friend, who visits him all the time and smokes cigarettes with him and drinks with him. And he's got this $20 that he wants to spend on scotch. And he borrows it with his friend, his $20, and it turns into beer. His buddy buys a bunch of beer and just drinks it all. Man, borrowing money is such a funny subject. I haven't read a lot of poetry about it. My experience with borrowing money to people hasn't been poetry worthy, but I could try. It's definitely a subject. Has anyone ever borrowed money from you? And do you feel like you could write a poem about it? All right, we're halfway through the book. We just made it through the halfway mark. How are we doing? We're doing good? We're having fun? Having a good time? I'm good. I got plenty of tea. It's delicious. Thank you, my good friend Adam Smith, for the delicious tea. I show up at my door, and there is an Amazon Prime package, and I personally don't support Amazon. I don't believe in it. I believe it's a thing, but I just don't use it. I have a hard time with that. So you can bet I was surprised when I found an Amazon Prime package at my door. I was like, what? When I opened it up, it was this lovely hibiscus ginger tea, which thank you very much again for watching me enjoy this lovely, lovely crimson liquid. Let's see if I can pour this right. Ooh, spilling everywhere. It's like literally as red as wine. It's crazy. Anyway, back to poetry. The zoo. Goliathus, the one banana peeling beetle in the USA, brighter than a comic strip, is dead. Wrapped in his native grasses, left on the doorstep of the museum, and a favorite of the visitors. 4.5 inches long with an 8-inch wingspread, bigger than Skeezix, with a life more full, pilling his bananas for survival, unlike Mamie Mullins, unlike Moon. Who would be Skeezix but for the environment? Ah, who cares or believes in them at all? At all. The Goliathus was better, and he was not a native. There's some random references there. I don't know who Mamie Mullins is and who this Moon character is. And Skeezix, I don't know what that is at all. I probably should take some time to learn about that kind of stuff. But the idea and the principle of it is pretty much there. You ever seen how cool bugs are? They're freaking wild. So wild. They're beautiful too. They have such rich color. We make a lot of dyes using bugs. Pretty crazy, huh? The Vendetta. His voice would whip through the dark, hoping to wound her. Night clutched at the house and a street lamp. She would return the fire and a clashing. Anger startled the room. When a courtyard light went on and pointed to chairs and the planes of their faces, truce dropped upon them. But the blood raged for blood and a waiting. There are some fights I've had. There's some fights I've had with my own gal that have made me just, I'll get back at you. But then again, I've heard fights from the people on the streets that are just like, holy cow, those two are going to murder each other. I've never gotten to that point. So never have I gotten to the blood-curdling screams of the transient folk of the streets. Anyway, let's go on to the next poem, shall we? Mafiosi. Dante Alighieri, with his leather face, got that way from hellfire, so the women say. Lucky thanks his stars, as do his boys. They are here, not there, to be broken by those eyes. This poem's tricky. I'm not really sure what it's about. Mafiosi. Dante Alighieri wrote, oh my gosh, not Paradise Lost. That's John Milton. He wrote the Divine Comedy. So Dante Alighieri wrote the Divine Comedy. With his leather face, got that way from hellfire, so the women say. Lucky thanks his stars, as do his boys. They are here, not there, to be broken by those eyes. Not sure what that means. Not every poem has to make sense. But it's a poem. The Totem. For the American troops killed in Korea. They move beneath it, forward and backward, and they die for it, often in smoke and sunshine. Others tear their guts out or their brains on rocks and tin cans in the swimming hole. Whichever way it faces, or they face it, it has its special misery, and it costs plenty. No help for it, though each man knows his lack Ask George Pickett. Ask Bojack. I don't necessarily know what the totem is, but I can imagine that they're talking about the chemical warfare that took place in Korea. That stuff was nasty. Nasty, nasty stuff. Just awful. And I think that if that's something you want to go and explore, well, as a poet who's been in Korea, you probably want to use poetry to fish out some of those demons. Oh, I like this poem. This one's fun. The Closet. Women are lost in the void with the old souvenirs. We have placed them behind Xmas tree decorations, dusty suits and old shoes, and older love peers from Red String. There is that girl in a brooch. A prayer book holds up my mother, who smiles at me and is seconded, smiling. My wife in a photo. It was such a kind of chaotic little poem, but I think it captures what it would be like to open up a family closet, and in that closet you find like so many like old decorations, and while you're like digging through them, you find this old photograph or two. It's funny, I never quite understood why we took the most sentimental things and we stuffed them in closets and in basements and attics. I don't know why we do that. Should the things that we care about be in places that we care about? Anyway, the photograph, CA 1920. I think that CA is for California, but I don't know. What do you think? After you hear this poem, tell me what you think. There are two girls. One I don't know. One is my mother. They sit on a rock in a field. They're about 16, I should guess. They can depend on things. That's in their faces. I must not move, or I shall be beside her. That will hurt her or stun her. There was enough of that later. She doesn't know it now. She doesn't know as she looks over the field of the existence of me. I am not born. I am not there in the sun to be forced to walk to her and say, I am your son. You don't know nor my father. No, nor know you. Are dead. Poets talk about death, and they explore death in various ways. And supposing that you just dug into this closet and you found all these pictures and you find one that you don't rightly recall the story behind it, you might find yourself thinking about the person's death who's in the photograph. Yeah, that's some tough stuff. This poem is confusing, so I'll try and take it slow. But you're smart. Maybe you'll figure it out. El Bronx. For Jay, who says we all should have that shot by Stieglitz on our walls. The mustachioed Italians, old hoods, a street, litter. For Jay, helplessly involved with them in the pinch. And for the Kippers and his eggs, his Danish blue cheese, Kippers, eggs, Danish blue, the clamor of the children. Put it on the walls, put it up. How far we've come. How near we are, you eye-tie gingerellas. Not every poem makes sense to me. But seeing as he's from the Bronx, it's probably something to do with his life in the Bronx. A senorita's bouquet. I thought of the flowers I picked for her, coming home from the movies one night, a metaphor in the eyes of the cat in our alley. Later, I came across her dried corsage from the wedding, my heart so full of love. I crumbled the flowers. A yellow dust like Bull Durham clung to my fingers, more softness to it than her wedding flowers. Why do you think he crushed the corsage? What what would lead someone to take a priceless heirloom and crush it into dust, feeling it in your fingers? Ancient music. Old Italians say a woman's stockings boiled in coffee makes love last forever. And true or false, this is right for it. Even a simple thing like strega, this is right for it. Like Santa with his bag, there is a magic to it. Gray is the Italian uniform. I don't really know. It's okay, but there are some funny things. The idea of a woman's stockings boiled in coffee makes love last forever. I'm not saying that like a woman's stockings lose their color, but they might. And if you boiled it in coffee, it probably would get a hue to it. So, the girl. She makes a good man leave the town, and she walks toward you, her hair drawn back carefully. It is the past. In the future, no things are lost. Things may even be found, though she has no right to it, no right to be precisely there. Better a civil service corridor, a drabness anywhere, a jar of urine warm to the touch as you walk toward the doctor carefully. Better a pile of slush. Can you imagine, right, being in the military and this like really hot nurse has to handle you and your urine? Like, that would suck because you're like, I totally want to talk to you, but you're totally handling that. I think that's kind of funny. Have you ever had like an embarrassing situation that you've thought about for a long time afterwards? Try and write a poem about it. The whole world coal. In the whole world coal, there are the remnants of old lovers and old enemies made into anthracite bituminous and pea. However strange to see, the sinews of a hand now just a lump or a grand slab under pencil. Even the city is incorporated in the plan. I too, why be so superior? I speak from 50,000 feet. You know, it's funny how the world's resources are already planned out. We've got everything planned. And what they were and what they will be, It's already calculated, coldly, cruelly. One day, they will dig up the mountains here in Salt Lake Valley for every scrap of gold they can get out of it. It's true. If you want to see something crazy, check out the Rio Tinto mine. It's amazing. They took an entire mountain and turned it inside out. And if they found gold under the temple, I bet you they would upend that thing just to get it. The rose for Cubby. Is what we're looking for, and they want a goddamn bouquet, not knowing that the rose is an invention, does not know, nor the beholder, what is coming next? What twist or gentleness? What tint? A bouquet, on the other hand, is a construction. Pile it together. One lousy posy, more or less. What the hell? You know, now I'm looking at this image of going into a flower shop, and he's captured this conversation that maybe his wife had, trying to talk to someone about a bouquet of flowers, or maybe he wanted to make a bouquet of flowers for her. The asphalt jungle. Frail against the verticals of backyard fence, Ignatz. The cat admonishes him. Nothing can stop the progress of the evening. There is the guardian of the law, the chesty and absurd policeman checking on the leaking garbage cans and a thin peeling of the moon. The officer has turned his head. The cans wait. The moon shows Chinese white across the street, and disregarding all the laws of physics and trajectory, the disinfectant brick. It's funny how we do have these rules and these laws, like jaywalking. A moon can jaywalk, walks right over the center of the street. But hey, that's just how I kind of saw this poem. The 5-day week. I'll admit there was a song that was in my head as soon as I started into this one. I wonder if you can guess what the song was. On Monday, her eyes were full of possibility. Mine too. I admit, we're replete with it. Tuesday, the color grew fainter. Were they blue or gray or maybe amber? Then the next day, Wednesday, and our lives became settled in the comfort of the week. That's the breaks, I said on Thursday, my earlier smile a leer, since Friday was so near. Friday, gotta get down on Friday. I mean, poets have been talking about how cool Friday is for a long time. It's nothing new. I mean, it's an old thing. Got a few more poems here, almost done. Night Piece. Rats move swiftly along a wall. They can frighten by moonlight, while a mouse can leap the rafters of the house more noisily. There's nothing quite like a rat blinded by nature. And fear, swallowed by space, dead center in the room. You can see the mustaches twitching. He doesn't know which direction to take. He's lost in the open area. Men have shot themselves in the head for less reason. I think that poem speaks for itself. It's good. It's really good. A classic case. The moon's a little arc, pasted on black cardboard just outside his bedroom window. Lovely Major Hoople. I swear the room is warm. The night is cold. The bedspread, turned down, has a comfortable feel. Lovely Major Hoople. Tomorrow he'll get up, put on his fez, and stand behind his gut, the sagging furniture, his friends. Lovely Major Hoople. Yow! That world of yours is crumbling away. The rotary lawn sprayers and the neighbors. Lovely Major Hoople. When will they possess your useless yard and send you out to work? To work, lovely Major Hoople. There are some military officers who all they do is stand there. That's it. That's not in his eyes, the poet's eyes, that's not work. That's just waiting. This poem's really fun. Lullaby of the Leaves. Jigga, jigga, yeah. That's the sound of the leaves. Listen to them. Jig among green, long silent branches among them. We can go silent among them, too, with jigga, yeah. I say that's it. The sound of the leaves implores it. You know, I think he captures this thought very well, where you get that thought in your head that you want to go roll in the leaves. Well, the leaves implore it. We're going to jump ahead a little bit, just a little bit, to Thus Spake Zarathustra. Forward, forward, he kept shouting. It was great to have him around, but oh, Lord, the air got thin. It was hateful without sound. The hell with the noble eagles, the noble mountains too. Let's go back down. If you've never read Thus Spake Zarathustra, it's a very creative work by Friedrich Nietzsche, who talks about how the air is thinnest, highest up, and only great eagles can climb there. And a lot of people don't want to be up there. It's hard. Okay, this is the last poem I'm going to read from this book. The Darkness Surrounds Us, which is the title of the book. It's for Creeley. Not so much, perhaps, darkness, but that there, for the moment, there is no darkness. And so it seems we're sort of blanketed with light. I might say even warmth. And then I might say, in what I know is selfishness, throw on another goddamn piece of wood, hustle up some coal, the hell with that. I mean, all of that out there. Let's kind of be like Indians, because the darkness is all around us. There is no darkness here for the moment, although the darkness is all around us. And that is Gilbert Sorrentino. My poem! Let's go ahead and read that. So after everything you've heard, this is a poem inspired by Gilbert Sorrentino. Don't much care for the peeping moon. He waxes and wanes over my nights above. That's why, my dear, I pull the blinds closed. Don't much care for no man seeing what I'm gonna do in here. This was a lot of fun to write.
Read it again.
Read it again. I'll read it again. Don't much care for the peeping moon. He waxes and wanes over my nights above. That's why, my dear, I pull the blinds closed. Don't much care for no man seeing what I'm gonna doing here. So I'm going to post that on the Instagram, spread that around. Thanks so much for joining me for an hour of poetry. Poetry Hour, episode 9. It's been fantastic. Thank you so much. Let your friends and family know that you enjoy poetry and you take an hour out of your day, Monday through Friday, to enjoy it. And maybe they might join you and enjoy it with you. Thanks so much again, and have a great night or a great day, wherever it is in the timeline. Bye.